Now on the pulse, useful and healthy information for you and your family. It's Northeast Delta Dental Radio with Tom Raffio and the Northeast Delta Dental Team.
Welcome to Northeast Delta Dental Radio. I'm Tom Raffio for Northeast Delta Dental Radio, and I'm also the head coach or head cheerleader of the dental insurance company, RAH, known as Northeast Delta Dental, and you'll know momentarily why I did that RAH. With me today for tips for getting your ACT or ACT together is Bob Faw. Now, you may remember I had Bob on before, not too long ago, and he has written a great book, a great message of positive change, and the book is called Energize, Ignite Passion and Performance with User-Friendly Brain Tools, which we'll get into. And in the spirit of transparency, Northeast Delta Dental, we've engaged Bob many times to light the passion, to help continue the passion of our employees. We have him come in on Customer Service Week, and my employee colleagues constantly asking for Bob to return. So I thought, well, you know what? If they're asking him to return to the company, I'm going to ask Bob back to the radio show. So good morning, Bob. Thanks for coming in on this December 7th and 8th.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Now, let's start with tips, because obviously the holiday season is both a combination of what I just talked about, that warm feeling of being with your family, but it can also be stressful because you have such heightened expectations, and then it may not ultimately be what you think it should be. So talk about that a little bit, and some of the things that you've done yourself personally to get through the holidays, but advice you could give to our listening audience.
Sure. Well, actually, you mentioned something really interesting earlier in your introduction when you talked about the Concord Christmas dinner. And there's been a lot of great research that shows that one of the greatest, it's not only an antidepressant, but it's also anti-stress, is to help those less fortunate than yourselves. So to get out and volunteer for something like that literally helps you see how good your life really is. Right, because a lot of the stress, if you think about it, for the holidays, for many people, is the stress of trying to accomplish many different things. And as a dear friend of mine once put it, instead of saying, I have to prepare for the holidays, I get to prepare for the holidays. There are many people that don't have that option. They don't have the money. They don't have the wherewithal. So I think being able to go and help other people that don't have what you have is a really powerful way of doing that in terms of the getting your act together, right? That's the ACT team, that artist, caveman, and thinker. We talk about energizing the artist, calming the caveman, convincing the thinker. And it's a powerful way to energize your own artist, that creative, passionate part of yourself, which is to step out and help other people. So I thought that was a great lead in. And of course, the rah-rah from the cheerleader piece is also a great one for energizing. Just that whole piece of taking a little bit extra effort to cheer somebody on, to make a difference. Even for yourself. That's one of the biggest factors that when we get really busy is even if you take 15 seconds in the car after some project is just finished, not only to give other people a pat on the back, but just stop and review your success.
So can you give yourself a standing ovation?
I like it. Yes, absolutely.
That's good. We'll try that. But in any event, I really like that. I'm going to steal this. I'm writing this down. But that we get to prepare. That it's an honor that we're fortunate enough where we can in fact prepare and get ready for the holidays, as opposed to just reacting to it. That's great. So when you were on the show last, you did a great job of explaining the artist, the caveman, kind of the fight or flight thing, and the thinker. So I think to provide context for today's shows, maybe do a quick review of the artist, the cave person, I guess, and thinker.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Thank you for being gender inclusive. That's also helpful. I find a lot of times that people, if you prefer to say cave woman, cave person, or as we say about our pet, our cave dog, whatever works for you. But so the three characters here, as you mentioned before, that the caveman, the cave person, is that most primitive part of our brain. It's the limbic system and so on is the part that's responsible for survival. It ignites the fight, flight, or freeze response. And it's can take over at any time the rest of our brain to keep us alive.
And as you explained last time, even though maybe cave person has a pejorative feel to it, but to some extent there are times where to save your life you need to be a caveman, right?
Yes. It's Yeah, it's a really good point because sometimes, matter of fact, one time a client said to me, boy, I wish I could get rid of my caveman because he gets into so many trouble saying angry things. And I said, actually, we would die without that part of our brain. We need that. It really does save our lives. If you're walking across the street and a car's about to hit you, that's the part of your brain that takes over, pumps you full of adrenaline, cortisol, boom, and you're up out of the way really fast.
So in certain situations, avoidance is a good thing.
Yes.
Because sometimes we're taught, when we're taking that first Psychology 101 course, in college, like you're taught, well, avoidance isn't necessarily a good thing, but in some situations, avoidance can be a strategic thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons I created the ACT team as characters is because people often take things too extreme, like it's either only be creative or only protect yourself or one side or the other or only look at facts. Well, no, actually, it's all three. And we do our best when the entire ACT team works together in concert because then we're far more effective. We're more motivated and thoughtful.
So it's very situational. It reminds me a lot of in sort of management practice. Theoretically, there were two schools of thought: Theory X and Theory Y. Theory X, you're sort of a control freak manager. Theory Y, where you totally empower your employee colleagues. And for a long time, people say, well, you got to be totally Theory Y. But there are times, if you're in the middle of a major systems conversion where only you have the knowledge to fix a system calamity, such as maybe, the exchange, that you can be more Theory X, and that's okay. And so it becomes much more situational. Right before commercial break, tell us if someone wanted to buy your book, Energize, how would they do that, Bob?
The easiest way is to go into Amazon.com or Amazon.uk or any of the Amazons around the world. It's available physical book as well as an ebook right now.
Great. And so I urge people, if Bob is kind of giving you the tease on the artist, the caveman, and thinker, to purchase his book, Energize. And when we return, we will talk about when you feel overworked, overwhelmed, how do you energize yourself, and what other tools can you use to help energize yourself. Okay, tips for getting your act together. We'll return with Bob Faw after commercial break. Stay tuned.
How was work, honey?
Oh, our Delta Dental rep visited. Got me thinking about my oral health, Reminded me about visiting my dentist and gave me this toothbrush.
I'm glad you're excited. But do you suppose you could not brush your teeth at the dinner table?
Huh? Oh, sure.
Thank you, honey.
As the region's most experienced dental benefits company, Northeast Delta Dental delivers unmatched local service, providing timely responses to customer questions and ensuring claims are processed quickly and accurately so enrollees feel taken care of every time.
Visit Northeast Delta Dental at nedelta.com.
Welcome back to Northeast Delta Dental Radio. I'm Tom Raffio for Northeast Delta Dental, and with me today is Bob Faw, the author of the book Energize, and we'll be talking about the holidays and tips for getting your act together during the holidays. And just as a reminder, those of you that would like to volunteer for the Concord Community Holiday Dinner, orchestrated by the world-famous Steve Dupree, just go on ConcordHolidayDinner.com and you can help volunteer, because as Bob mentioned before commercial break, one of the things that can help you appreciate the holiday season and help you feel that it's an honor that you can actually prepare for the holiday season is by helping others, and it kind of gives you a nice benchmark for your own life. For my running friends, just as a reminder, next weekend is the Jingle Bell Run out of Runlet right here in Concord. So those of you that want to do a fitness run, as well as monies going to the Arthritis Foundation, please join us for the Arthritis Run next weekend, which will be starting from Runlet. So Bob, you're an author. So tell us what that was like.
Wow, it was a tremendous amount of work, as you know, of course, with your book, There Are No Do-Overs. But I've got to say that it was an incredibly rewarding experience because I really had to refine my thinking a lot, and the editorial staff was extremely helpful in making me really think deeply about how to make sure this works for people that don't meet me. How do I explain it one shot?
Interesting. And that was
there's no do-overs in a book.
There you go. Well, thank you for mentioning that. Of course, that's the book that I wrote. My co-author was Dave Cowan. So the sort of subscript to the title is The Big Red Factors for Sustaining a Business Long Term. And much of what you talk in your book, I don't put it in those terms. I do include similar themes in my book. And the great thing about working with Dave Cowens is he wasn't sort of the typical professional athlete that thought writing a book was, kind of telling tales of different games. I mean, we sat down a few times. We did a lot of emailing. And so the way the No Do-Overs book works is that each chapter begins with sort of a sports anecdote, which then I apply the business principle. And what we found is the most successful sports franchises, whether it's San Antonio Spurs currently, or the Celtics historically, or the current New England Patriots, for example, have many of the same long-term principles. And my goal in getting the book out with Dave, as he puts it, there's a story to tell that you don't have to have such a short-term focus on corporate profits, that if you take care of people, take care of customers, do well in the community, work hard, that you can sustain your business on a long-term basis. And of course, his nickname was Big Red, so the website is bigredfactor.com. So kind of like Energize, your book, Bob, you can go on Amazon, look for There Are No Do-Overs, or you can go on the website called bigredfactor.com. So now that I'm published, I empathize and have so much. I've always had respect for you. I have even more respect because one of the things is you think you're a good writer, like I'm an English major at Harvard, but by the end of this process, I felt like I really wasn't a good writer. So what I thought was interesting, maybe everybody else did not. So let's get back to today's topic. So if you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed out during the holiday season, the tools that you write about in your book, how do you apply them during the holiday season, or in any season really, but particularly now?
Yeah, there's a number of different ways. I mean, as we said before, there's the calm the caveman is often one of the first things you want to do, because as you get worried about the guest list or preparation, getting all the gifts together, whatever it might be, is being able to take a breath, slow down a little bit, even just mentally. Even if you're driving from place to place, take some slow, deep breaths. Relax. Help yourself relax a little bit. Do that periodically. And then, of course, the whole piece around Energize the Artist, which is then to say, why do I love Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever it is that you're celebrating? Why do I love this? And think about the joy, the connection, the family connection, things like that. And when you refocus yourself on the rewarding aspects of it, it takes away a lot of the stress of it, at least in the moment. And it literally does change your brain chemistry. So instead of the cortisol, which is the stress hormone, you start kicking out the dopamine and the endorphins, and you feel better, you're a little more relaxed, you're more friendly, and you're passing on the holiday spirit.
So I do understand Calm the Caveman, and I do understand Energize the Artist, but tell us why you have to convince the thinker part of your brain. I'm curious about that.
Sure. Well, people, a great deal of the research around motivation and decision-making says that we do actually a phenomenal amount of our decision-making from emotional reasons, which isn't a surprise for anyone who actually is involved with sales or having to run a business, because you see that happen. But also people are going to be analyzing, and that's the thinker, right? The thinker is the analytical part of your brain. They can think logically, do math, look into the future, imagine what life will be like, learn from things from the past, and so on. So it's incredibly helpful for yourself to make sure that you've got good plans, right? If you get your thinker engaged, convince your thinker, this actually will work. If you come up with a plan for whatever it is you're going to do for the holidays, and it makes sense and there's enough time in there to do it and enjoy it as well, that helps convince that part of your brain, which then in turn relaxes the caveman again.
Now, in your book, you talk about making a list of the pros and cons of your top plans. Why is that important? Is it the exercise of literally writing them down, or is it just to, like you say, to convince you to actually act on the one that has more pros?
That's a good question. One of the reasons is because we tend to make decisions so emotionally so much of the time, is being able to actually put things down and look at them on paper helps the thinker take a stronger role in the decision making. And that can be very helpful, particularly if you're wanting to buy things that often we want to buy a gift from an emotional standpoint. But if it's a big deal, we might do a quick little pros and cons list just to get ourselves thinking more rationally about, well, if I actually buy this $95 gift for Susie and Johnny's only getting a $45 gift, maybe I need to reassess that before I jump in and spend the money.
Let's switch gears and talk about a leader of an organization. And of course, I really think there's really been a new economic norm since 2008. And I know in my own company with the Affordable Care Act and other things have really started to transform our company from primarily business to business or B2B to business to consumer, or B2C or direct to consumer. And it's really been a large scale transformation, which is why I'm doing things like radio and books and Northeast Delta Dental Stadium. So the tools that you write about and you've talked about today, how does that help a leader implement that transformation so he or she gets, the buy-in amongst his or her colleagues?
Mm-hmm. Well, again, helping not just get your own act together, but also helping your employees get their act together is extremely helpful. So as a leader, if you take responsibility for your communication to do all three of those things, you're much better off than just barking out orders or just trying to get people excited or whatever it might be. So it's making sure that if you're going through major changes, which change is happening faster and faster for every industry, no question about it, is you help make sure that people feel somewhat calm about it by saying, here's the things that we're going to continue doing that you already appreciate. Here's the skills and the competencies that you already have going that we're going to continue doing. Because if you just talk about what you're going to change, people get scared, understandably. They get nervous. Oh, I'm not valuable anymore. Oh, this is going to be too difficult.
Right. And in general, we're not wired for change. The caveman kind of appears at that point, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So by being able to say, here's our goal, and here's a bunch of things that we already have going for us to help us achieve that goal. Your skills, your competencies, our processes, whatever. That also makes people a lot more comfortable when you say, and here's what we're going to change.
Now, when we've had you at the company, I know when I talk to employees, I get to introduce you, but I don't always stay for the whole show, so to speak. But when I talk to employee colleagues after, they say, after listening to Bob, I'm really energized to do that task that I was kind of putting off. So how do you energize yourself to do those tasks that we all have to do in life but don't necessarily love to do?
That's a really good question. And part of it, and this again where the thinker comes in, because the thinker, like I said, can look into the future and it can say, all right, for example, taxes is one of those things that I tend to procrastinate. Really, it just gets my caveman crazy. But if I think, all right, if I get this done in January, there's 3 months of relaxation compared to the stress that I usually put myself through. So really being able to visualize that and say it's going to be that much better. My accountant can get everything done without the last minute rush. I don't have to deal with all the extra stuff. So really being able to visualize the benefit, right? Being able to see that in your mind, or what I would call your inner movie, playing an inner movie about how much it's going to be much better. That often helps people. And for me, when I do something far in advance, so for example, when I came to speak in September at the Northeast Delta Dental, I made sure to actually plan well in advance what I was going to do, not the last minute. So that way, I'm relaxed about it, and I can be thinking in my mind and as we get closer about it.
And you can visualize that positive outcome. I really love this last portion here because I know that'll motivate me to get my taxes done early too, because then you're thinking it's done by the end of January, after you get all the forms that you need, the W-2s and so forth, and then you don't have to worry about, February and March. In about a minute, could you tell us how these ideas can help raising healthy and successful children? Because one of the things that, Dave Cowens and I in our book, There Are No Do-Overs, we felt that in addition to the book being valuable for businesses, it was also good for families. So tell us briefly how Energize and some of these tools help parents raise healthy and successful children.
Sure. Well, I'm going to share a tool that has helped many families. And it's not directly in the book, but it's called Highlights, your daily highlights. And getting it together, and I've had somebody from Northeast Delta Dental actually share that she was doing this a few years ago when she learned it from me the first time with her family, and the family was not connecting. A lot of arguing, a lot of discussions. Her daughter had some real challenges, mental health issues, and they started every day. The first thing they would, when they get home at night, talk about what was their highlight from the day. What was the best thing? And instead of ignoring each other and fighting, they started sharing that way, and it literally changed their relationships. It helped her children gain a lot more self-confidence because they focused a greater and greater percentage of the time on what does work and what they can do about it. All right? It's not to the exclusion of talking about the negative. You still have to face the hard truths. But by starting with that, it changes the tenor of the relationship for people, and it trains their brain to look for what they can do and what they're successful
Gives you a
at.
positive starting point for sure.
Yeah.
Bob, the time always flies when I'm with you. Have to have you back again. For everybody out there, Bob's book is called Energize, Ignite Passion and Performance with User-Friendly Brain Tools. Bob, thank you for spending December 7th and 8th with me, and we'll have you back.
Thank you, Tom.
Tom Raffio for Northeast Delta Dental will return next week.